Nice to meet you.
You too.
Loved your recent book. Encounters was awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, lots of synchronicity, which is exactly how your journey started, didn't it?
Yeah, American Cosmic, it literally just emerged on its own. And I
Yeah.
basically just documented it as I was going. And all of those beings, entities, whatever they are, came up through the people I was talking with. They just kind of arose on their own. And
Yeah.
it was just so amazing. And honestly, I can't really understand it. So, because I can't really understand it, I'm allowing it to happen and I'm recording it as it goes. And it sure is helping people. I mean, I can see that people say, yes, this is exactly how it happened for me. I feel that, and I allowed myself to do that, just like you allowed yourself to take that journey instead of being held back by the people who tell us we shouldn't be doing this, and that happens all the time, by the way.
Well, I felt in American Cosmic, I felt like I was on the journey with you. Felt like I was in an adventure with Tyler and I
Yeah.
love. So why don't we give just the listeners a little background because how did you, end up in the Vatican studying purgatory? When did you write that book? What year was it?
It was published in 2019, but the journey of beginning the research happened in 2012. So it was
Okay.
between 2012 and 2018
Okay.
that I did all the research and information, and then wrote it on and off for 2 years. And I even thought I finished it, but then I took Tyler to the Vatican with me and recognized, wait a minute, this is the last chapter of the book, and I had to tell my editor, and she was okay with it. So that's kind of how it went.
Were you in the secret archives or archives or
Yes, yes. I was in the secret archives. Yeah, it's hard to get into those. They're
I was
they've
sure.
re, they've renamed them, by the way. I don't
Oh,
know if they renamed them because of the American Cosmic or what. Sometimes I
right.
wonder. I'm like,
Yeah.
why? I think they were just, they said, look, this whole English version of the Apostolic Archive, but it's called the Secreto, like secret
Right.
archive, but it's actually meaning just the private archive of the Pope. That's just really what it's supposed to be about. It's become like the secret archive. And I think that they don't want to associate with, trying to hide stuff. But it actually is very difficult to get into. And there are documents there that not everyone can see. And I couldn't see some as well that I knew were there, by the way. Basically, being a historian of Catholic history for my whole life. And I had this job and have it. I'm a professor and I teach religious studies, and we don't advocate for religions. We just teach it to students because a lot of students need to know. They're either business majors who are going maybe to India, they need to know about the various religions there, or China, and also just people who are religious. I get a lot of people who are Christians. They come into my class and they've actually never read the Bible, which is kind of funny. And so we crack it open and I say, what's in there? And it really shocks them. So I actually enjoy my job because I feel like I'm doing something that people really need. They need to know about the religions they practice. My goodness, pretty successful as a professor, doing the normal things that professors do, which is to publish about what their research is. And so published a lot about purgatory, afterlife journeys of Catholics throughout time, and things like that. So it never occurred to me to talk about UFOs, frankly. I never thought about UFOs until 2012. And the way that happened was I do a lot of research in archives, and archives are basically libraries of really old manuscripts and things that are can't be kept in a normal, they would disintegrate if they were kept in a normal library. Doing historical work, a lot of historians know how to do archival research. And so I was doing archival research on purgatory, which is a Catholic doctrine. And this is a doctrine where, if a person dies, but their soul isn't good enough to go to heaven, where do they go? Well, Catholics, I have this idea, it's a doctrine called purgatory. So what I did was I was looking at that doctrine throughout time because younger Catholics don't know about it. Even like older Catholics don't know about it. It went off the map after Vatican II in the 1960s. And I was trying to trace reasons for that. Like, why? While I was doing that, I came across lots of aerial phenomena in the Catholic historical record. So a lot of people saw discs, in the sky, coming down, engaging with people. And they had different interpretations for it. But the patterns were so similar that I kept notes, right? So I kept notes, even though it wasn't part of my research. I thought this is really interesting. And it kept happening like, century after century after century. I was like, okay, here in France it happened, here in Italy in the 13th century it happened, here. And I just kept those notes. And at the end, when I published my book on purgatory, I was going to actually just go on to talk about this Catholic bishop here in the South, John England. He was from Ireland, super interesting guy. And I was going to work on his book. But I showed a friend my research and, the notes about the aerial phenomena. He took a look at it and he said, this looks like Steven Spielberg's films. And, I was like, thought he was crazy. But then I attended, there was a coincidence that there was a UFO conference near me during that time. And I went and I heard people talking and I was like, oh my goodness, what they're talking about is exactly what I studied and it's still happening. So I shifted my perspective to modern day reports of UFOs. Yeah. Honestly, I had no idea what I was getting into. So I get into it and I think it's going to be easy. I think, it's going to be this easy treatment of historical, just a change of framework, like religious framework. And now we have this technological framework. How easy is that? No. That's when I started to meet people in our three-letter agencies, FBI, CIA. They were really interested in what I was doing. And I was very uncomfortable. Like, wow, what's going on here? This is before everything that's come out. So, this is in 2013, 2014. And I was outside of my research territory and I felt really cautious, and I didn't know that our government had these programs that had been going on. And I came upon them. I met someone in the program, super charismatic guy who was a genius and, liked to keep to himself. And I couldn't put this together. This person is like a rocket engineer or, but also he has these biomedical engineering companies and, he kind of flies around all over the place and what's going on with this. And so that was a really strange time period, but I acclimated to it. And I used everything that I had within me as a scholar to kind of use what I had to figure it out. And that's how it came about.
That's amazing. Which he's anonymous, or he was anonymous in your book.
So, okay, let me talk about that. So I do, as a professor of religion, or just basically any scholar that's in an academic institution, we have policies, we have ethical policies that we have to follow. And if we don't follow those, we can't be practicing researchers. And one of those is that if we're doing research on people, we have to protect them because in the past, people weren't protected and terrible things happened to them. So basically, I went through what's called an IRB, which is internal review board. Everyone who does research in a university on human subjects has to go through that. So these people requested that I use pseudonyms. And so I use pseudonyms for them until they decide that they want to be known. So one of the people I used a pseudonym for was this scholar at Stanford, and I used James. That's the pseudonym he requested, but he has since come out as himself, who is Gary Nolan. And then Tyler, if he chooses to come out, that's good, but I won't out his identity until he does.
And Tyler is named after the Brad Pitt Fight Club character. I love.
I had to name him that because, and it was okay with him because first I didn't know, but he actually loves that movie. And I thought, he's in this situation where he's a character who's invisible and he has to remain that way. And he's compartmentalized. Like his job is that his boss doesn't even know what he does. So he's bound by these Fight Club type of rules of don't talk about it. So it seemed really natural to me to call him Tyler D, right? Because Tyler Durden, because he fit that. And so I suggested that to him.
Was he cute like Brad Pitt too?
No comment.
Okay.
But when I told him that Tyler D, he told me in that movie and book, which by the way, both are so amazing. The character, he wears this purple robe and he also, makes that soap. And Tyler D actually had a purple robe and had the soap. So
What?
he really resonated with the
So
character. This
another
is before,
synchronicity.
yeah,
Wow.
it was so strange. Yeah. So then I knew that this was very accurate. Like I surmised his identity pretty well.
Wasn't there a point where they actually asked you to be blindfolded as they brought you to a site?
Well, it took me a while to say yes to that. Tyler, he does UFO research, crash retrieval research as a hobby. And so, but he's affiliated with the space program. So he had access to some of these crash retrieval places.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I didn't have this language, nor did I have the knowledge or framework to know that this was happening. But he said to me, I don't think you actually believe in UFOs. I think that you think that they're all like imagined and imaginary.
Mm-hmm.
He was right. And so he said, I want to take you to a place to show you the physicality of the UFO. And I said, sure. He said, but we have to blindfold you and it's a secret place. And I said, wait a minute.
Yeah,
I
right.
have to go with a friend of mine, a friend's coming with me. And he said, at first he said, no, no, never mind. But then I told him that Gary Nolan wanted to go. And Gary Nolan has the technology to actually look at the stuff and analyze it. And so he said, okay, yes. So Gary and I went. So we put the blindfolds on and we went through, we were blindfolded. It took about 45 minutes or so in this kind of bumpy car ride. And then we got out. And I remember just looking around thinking, oh, I think I've been here before, or I feel like I've seen this.
Yeah.
And Tyler said, do you feel like you've been here before? And I said, well, yeah, but I know I haven't. And he said, oh, they had an insider on the X-Files, and this is that scene from the X-Files. And then I thought, that's really crazy. Like
Yeah.
literally, I thought Tyler is crazy. But in my mind, I thought, of course, this is how it happens in media. Media makes it real for millions of people. So I thought, of course, that's why I recognize this, because I watched that episode of the X-Files and that was in my memory. And I was doing a lot of cognitive science research on how we form our memories. And a lot of them come from media. I mean, and media is, real or not real, or a combination. Of course, I'm going to remember something that was from the X-Files.
I mean, they have access to that site
It
to.
wasn't the actual site, it
Oh,
was a
okay. Just
recreation of it.
recreation
Yeah.
of it. That's
So
so
apparently, what he was suggesting was somebody had been taken to that actual site,
yeah.
and this
They
is
told
it.
the
And
story.
this, yeah, yeah, and that could very well be. I
Mhm.
don't know.
That's so crazy. And then another part of the book I found was amazing is that you then bring Tyler with you to the Vatican. And he got the same clearance that you do. And you're like, who are you?
It was a really strange moment because I had been asked to go to the Vatican. It was very unrelated to UFO research, completely
Right.
unrelated.
Right.
And so I had already known I was going to go. And I mentioned this to him. And he didn't really say too much other than I could see that his eyes kind of lit up.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, if I'm going to the Vatican and I was supposed to be looking at the levitation records of Joseph of Cupertino, who's the levitating saint,
Yeah.
and a nun, Sister Maria of Agreda.
Mhm.
They were both born in the same century. They were both born around 1602, 1603. And each of them are have levitation and bilocation. I was asked to go to the Vatican to look at this stuff by a person whose aunt was a nun who he had seen levitate. And so he's a lifelong Catholic and really was like, I believe in this and I would like you to go and get as much information as you can. And of course I said, yes, of course I'll do that. Once I went to New Mexico, I thought this might be actually really interesting to take Tyler with me because he's an expert at propulsion and levitation and,
Yeah.
levitating like satellites into space and things like that. I thought, I wonder if he would be able to analyze some of the material that I'll be looking at from just a different perspective. But I didn't think he would be able to get in. And I
Yeah.
told him that. I said, you need a PhD in Catholic history or something like that, in order to get in. You can't actually just show up. And he's like, okay, sure. I don't have that. He goes, but maybe I could get some letters from, people that I know at university. So he got all these letters and I still thought, I just don't think he's going to get in. And
Yeah.
I was really honest with him, but he said, well, let's go anyway. And I was like, all right. Well, I told him not to tell them who he was, because I didn't want any kind of,
Yeah.
I didn't want,
Them
I didn't want to,
suspicious. Yeah.
yeah, I really didn't want that. And we went in on different flights, and he got there first, and he was having a hard time getting in. He was texting me, as he was trying to get in. And I was thinking, oh, this is terrible. So it was about an hour and a half or so that he was really trying to do this. And he was getting frustrated. And he kept asking me, can I just show who I am? So finally I just said, yes, just let's see if it works. And I didn't think it would. So he took out his credentials, of which he had many, by the way, and he showed one of them, and then he dropped some. So he said that he bent down to pick it up, and when he came back up, he saw his face on the screen, and after that, he was in, like, easy, boom, right, and yeah, and that's when I started to think, this is really going to be a weird trip.
You know what I was surprised about is that there's a satellite on top of the Vatican somewhere.
Oh yeah, it's an observatory,
Yeah.
and it's been around from, I think, 1800s. One of the first to create an observatory to look into space. And so it's on top of a hill outside of the Vatican, about an hour and a half.
Hmm.
And it's the place that it's on is called Castle Gandolfo, and it's a papal residence, and there are papal gardens there. It's really incredibly beautiful, but it's right next to a lake that was created from this meteor, and it's just
Hmm.
so beautiful, and deep blue water, and it's really high up, so that they have this great view of space, basically. And the monks that live there are astrophysicists and astronomers. I also
Good.
went to their archive, and I got to stay there because I actually know the director, Brother Guy Consolmagno, and he invited me to go there years earlier. And Tyler and I stayed at a scholar's residence there, and we
Mhm.
were able to look through their archives and see things there that were really interesting and, space related.
When I decided to read the Bible with my like new eyes, right?
Yes,
I wanted to
yes.
shut out but everything I had been told. And girl, I did not get past that first few, chapters in Genesis. And then I read the book of Enoch. Are angels aliens?
In the beginning, I went to a friend of mine and I said, I think I might be doing this book. And I said, and it's kind of bridging these two concepts. And she's just thought I was crazy. She said, how are you going to do that, Diana? Nobody's going to understand you, because here is an alien, and this is what an alien looks like. And here is an angel, and this is what an angel looks like. And I thought, okay, this is a person who's giving me a reality check, is basically saying,
Mhm.
you have a hard job, but because what does an alien actually look like? It doesn't look like what the media tells us. And what does an angel look like? It sure doesn't look like what Catholic history has told us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, read the scripture of what an angel looks like. They're not Campbell soup kids. And you
yeah.
know what's funny is that I always used to say that to me in my mind, Archangel Michael looked like Brad Pitt. That was what we're told, right? We're
That's
like,
right. Yeah, yeah,
ooh, Brad
yeah.
Pitt. But he's always depicted with a sword. There are these characteristics about him that say he is a leader,
Yep,
he's a protector, right? He's always over and dominating over, evil or demonic energy
yep.
or yeah, or whatever he's on. And you talk about that in your book, your new book, with an experiencer. And I just was like, holy cow, this is insane. Do you mind sharing that story?
I don't mind at all. So, and remember that for every experiencer in that book, there were probably 50 others that had
Oh,
similar, if not, I mean, almost the same
right.
experiences. And so I just chose the ones who I thought would help people, because obviously, if they're having these experiences, so many people are. And I thought, okay, I think a lot of people are going to understand this,
And
that,
relate to it.
and
Yeah.
and it'll clear up a lot of misconceptions, because a lot of people, when they experience UFO events, will also have these other kinds of things happen to them, but sometimes they think they're not related. So this
Mhm.
is Gray Man, and Gray Man is I have to use a pseudonym, the only pseudonym in the book. He was an experiencer from when he was young, like in his 20s. There was a very well-known he's from Australia, and there was a very well-known UFO flap that happened in New South Wales in Australia, and he was part of that. It happened while he was driving, and after that, a bunch of things that he didn't even think were related to that happened to him. But after meeting me, he was like, okay, now I understand that, it kind of opened up something. He would experience not just typical alien encounters with grays, right? That seemed really scary to him, and he felt that they weren't good. And he would experience this entity, which he didn't, by the way, he didn't grow up with the same kind of thing that you and I grew up with, which was Catholic iconography. Like, you and I would know who St. Michael was, but he did not know this. He did not know this.
Yeah.
And so and I thought he did actually.
Right.
So he explained that he had this, he didn't call it a dream. He didn't know what it was, but he had this, he said, I had an experience of this entity. I woke up and it was right next to me, and it was shining, and it was, this male figure, and it had a presence, and it was really amazing, he said. And I felt like it had a lot of love. And he said that it wanted me to learn something from it. So he went with it. And that's when he saw it fighting these dark, shadowy things. And he said that he felt like it was training him how to fight these things. So he was fighting these things. And then afterwards, he said he wanted to hug it. And he said, can I hug you? And it said, no, I have a sword. And then he saw that it did have a sword. And he was, and he described it in exactly like what St. Michael looks like to us, right? So very shiny being that's imposing but loving, right? And I thought, I said, it sounds like you had a vision of St. Michael, the archangel. And he didn't say anything back to me. And so, a couple of weeks went by, and he was supposed to come to the United States. And so he went through his, looking for his passport, and he found this prayer card. He did not know it was a prayer card, but he found it. And it had a picture of St. Michael. It was a St. Michael prayer card. It was given to him by a friend of his who had a very bad experience and gave it to him, and strangely said, this is you, like something like 20 years earlier or something like that. And so, he found it, and it really freaked him out. So once he saw that, he decided to do some internet research, and he saw all these videos on St. Michael, and then he called me. Now, this is a person who is extremely reserved. Extremely reserved, and the job that he has is a reserved person would have to have that job.
Wow.
So he was almost like upset. I could just hear it in his voice that he said, I just found out about this thing called St. Michael. And I was like, wait a minute, I thought you knew about that. And so I recognized that he actually did not know about this, but he had this vision of it as it perfectly is, right? So that made me then have to reconsider, like, what are we talking about? These things, are they, objective, and are they like Jungian archetypes, or what are they?
Collective archetypes.
Yeah. So I put it out there. I still don't know, but I believe in their reality, and they show up a lot. So St. Michael shows up a lot.
I know. Amazing. You hear so many stories about Archangel Michael from all different cultures as well.
I know, from all different cultures. That's what's so interesting. Even secular people who don't know and don't didn't grow up with it, and they have
a character like that.
Yeah. And they're like, okay, so so that was really interesting. And I went from Dr. Ia, right? Dr. Ia Whiteley, who does very straight up kind of, research and stuff. And I thought, okay, now I'm going to drop everyone off the cliff with the gray man story and St. Michael, the archangel story, because people really need to know that when they have UFO experiences, other things will be happening too. And they need to understand that this is a pattern. And so, and my editor, by the way, he was really confused. He was like, this is really amazing, but Diana, this isn't a UFO. And I said, no, it's not. Right. And that's the thing. It's like, we have to drop how we've been trained to think of UFOs. Yes. We really have to drop that.
Agree. I totally agree. And that's why I love your book, because it almost normalizes it. Yeah. Well, it normalized it in my life. And I know my life maybe not be the norm, but it might be the new norm. I also love that. I think it was with Jose, maybe, where they have this knowing. These things are also part of this, is what you found.
Yeah. Yes. So Jose kind of was born this way. A lot of people felt that they were, had some kind of experience that then these things happened.
Yeah.
but he, as that's why I described his life as he was young, in Artesia. And he's such an interesting guy.
Your student too? Was he one of your
Yes,
students? Yeah.
yes, yeah. So he had this life that, it was so challenging.
Yeah.
Growing up in a drive-by city, right?
Mm.
And his dad being a part of a cartel, and having violence. Just his family had to sleep on a mattress underneath windows so that they wouldn't be hit by bullets in the night. This
Mm.
is how he grew up. And they also were very, very Christian. So he
Mhm.
grew up with this iconography, and they also had UFO experiences and lived in Roswell. And so
Oh.
all of this, yeah, so all of this impacted him. And then he went into the military and became a Marine when he was 18,
Mm.
and had amazing experiences out. Terrible, amazing. He would never be shot. Like, he would go out almost wanting
Yeah.
to die, and he would not get shot. He would not, and he was on the
Protected.
front. And he
Mhm.
did so many tours. And then right as he came out, he came to my department in philosophy and religion. And I saw him. He was like an amazing student, and just learned philosophy experientially. He already knew it almost. He was basically there just to learn the language, because he already knew. And you could tell he was in everyone's classes, and all the professors had the same reaction to him. Like, okay, I can give this kid's going to know. And I'm just going to give him everything I have, like all my knowledge. And so
Yeah.
we gave him all of this knowledge. And he is a huge advocate for young people and hope. And
Mm.
I actually just saw him. He was at this conference that I was at in Stanford. And there were a lot of these people that were just doom and gloom about climate change and this and that. And they were like,
Yeah.
it's so terrible. This is going to happen. And he knows all that. They were all like they were privileged people,
Mhm.
all older. And they were having this conversation with him where they thought that they were
Mm.
telling him what was up. And I was thinking, nah, you need to listen to this guy. And he was basically just going, nope, 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 nope. There's hope. We are it. We are it. And so when you say the new normal, bringing it back to your experiences, it's not just that this is the new normal. This has to be the new normal.
Mhm. Yeah. Jose, his experiences, he would always have that knowing. It seems like, and he was always looking up, it seems as well. People
Yes.
tell
Yeah.
me that all the time too. So people will always say, "Oh my gosh, Annie, you always see everything." And usually it's birds, right? Because, so I obviously will have more experiences because I'm always looking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so since he was a little kid, he was always having experiences and he just probably got accustomed to looking up.
Yes, and that's interesting that you say that, because one of the things that Dr. Ia Whiteley, she's a space psychologist, and she helps
Mhm.
pilots and astronauts. She helps train them for extreme spaces. She told me that almost everybody in the Western culture in the United States and in England, where she lives, she says we only have a horizontal view.
Mm.
We actually don't look up.
Oh,
Nor do we don't have a 360 view. She said pilots and astronauts have to have this view of 360 degrees. And
mm.
she said that, in other cultures, people have different kinds of views.
Mm.
So it sounds like you've cultivated this non-horizontal view.
Yeah.
But I think this is such a great point. I think people should start looking around.
For me, my journey has been really about empowering or reclaiming the power for all the women, before who couldn't. And that's why I was so excited to have you on, Diana, as a woman in your field and up against all those men, and you walking into all those situations. I just felt there was a lot of power behind that for a woman.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And I do absolutely feel this is a new thing that's happening, or not new, but it's finally happening. I love all of the working with women through doing this. That's
Hmm.
what I really,
Yeah.
and I focus on that too.
So what's next for you
Well, I am working with some women. I'm working with Simone Plante. She's in my book.
in your book?
And I'm working with Dr. Ia Whiteley. She's
Mhm.
also in my book. And I'm at a point now where I don't know, but I have a feeling that it's going to be more practice. It's going to be more, this is how you tune in.
Mm.
So I teach a class with Simone on the protocols, and teaching people connect now. This is how we do it.
Mm,
And I think that that's what I take from it. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm not trying to prove UFOs
right.
exist or anything like that. This change in culture where we're at, with the change with AI and going into space and all of this. And we really need to, in my opinion, support each other. I just want to support people in doing that.
Me too. Awesome.
So I do have a website. It's dwpasulka.com.
Thank you so very much for sharing this
Absolutely.
moment with me. I
Yeah.
just appreciate you so much. I feel like this is, conversations that are going to be more normal, right? That are going to be more had.
Yes. Then I like how you put it, the new normal.
Well,
That's
thank you so
beautiful.
much. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you, Shanna. Thank you so much. It was wonderful to speak with you.